Okay, quick welcome. This is an original Tales Fair story, and the way it played out caught me off guard. Let's get into it.
At the family reunion, my sister got up, pointed at my 13-year-old, and said, "She is mentally behind. Don't give her money." The room fell silent, a sudden suffocating vacuum where the air had been just moments before. My grandmother stared in surprise, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth, the silver trembling just a fraction before she set it down with a deliberate, terrifying quietness and asked, "You really don't know who she is?" My sister went pale, the color draining from her face like water receding from a shore before a tsunami. And in that silence, the ghosts of our shared history began to howl. Wait, really? We arrived late on purpose, not because traffic was bad, but because the highway offered a kind of sanctuary, a steel and asphalt ribbon where we could pretend, just for a little while longer, that we were not heading into the lion's den. You see, there is a specific art to arriving late to a family gathering. It is a calculated strategic maneuver born of years of scar tissue. Because if you show up late, you miss the first round of questions, those sharp, barbed inquiries wrapped in the guise of concern. You miss the first round of forced hugs, the press of bodies that feel less like affection and more like a cage closing in. You miss the part where everyone pretends nothing happened last time. That collective amnesia that families like mine wear like a Sunday coat. It is a small, quiet survival skill, a way to shorten the exposure time to the radiation of disapproval. My daughter Vivian did not know that, of course. She sat in the passenger seat, a bundle of nervous energy, smoothing her shirt like it was a job interview, and her fingers tracing the fabric over and over again as if she could iron out her anxieties with just the tips of her thumbs. She checked her hair in the visor mirror, tilting her head this way and that, searching for a flaw she was sure was there. Then she checked it again. "Do I look okay?" she asked, her voice small, barely rising above the hum of the tires on the pavement. "You look like you," I said, keeping my eyes fixed on the horizon where the gray sky met the gray water. "That is not what I meant," she whispered, and the hurt in her voice was a small, sharp hook in my heart. "I know," I replied, softening my grip on the steering wheel. She stared at the ocean through the window, like it might give her better answers than I would, watching the waves crash against the jagged rocks, perhaps wondering if she was the rock or the water. And then, inevitably, she asked the question I had been dreading, the one that hung between us like a suspended blade. "Are Grandpa and Grandma excited to see me?" I kept my eyes on the road, watching the white lines dash by, counting them to keep my breathing steady. "They will act excited," I said, choosing accuracy over comfort. Vivian frowned, her reflection in the glass twisting. "That is also not an answer." "It is an answer," I told her gently, navigating a curve. "It is just not the one you want." And then she said it. "And Aunt Monica." There it was, the name that always lands in my chest like a dropped cup, shattering into porcelain shards that prick with every breath. "Monica likes attention," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, trying to strip the bitterness from the vowels. Vivian smiled, a tentative, hopeful thing. Anyway, everyone likes attention." "Not like Monica," I corrected. And though I didn't elaborate, the weight of the words settled in the car. Vivian didn't argue after that. She just looked smaller for a moment, shrinking into the seat as if trying to occupy less space in the world, like her excitement had bumped into something sharp, and she was bleeding invisible drops of disappointment. Then she sat up again, straightening her spine, because she is 13, and hope is still her default setting. A resilient, beautiful, dangerous thing. The rental was one of those modest coastal places that tries very hard to look charming, clad in weathered wood that had seen too many winters, with sand tracked everywhere in the cracks of the floorboards, whispering of tides gone by. And it was a kitchen that smells like someone has been frying something since 2007. A lingering, greasy scent of old onions and stale oil that clung to the curtains and the upholstery. The moment we opened the door, sound hit us, a wall of it. Laughter, plates clinking against ceramic. Someone shouting a name across the room, like we were at a sports event rather than a reunion. My dad saw us first. He stood near the mantel, holding a drink he probably didn't want. And he smiled like he had been smiling at the same family photo for years, and just remembered where it was taken. A fixed, practiced expression that reached his mouth but never quite touched his eyes. "Lydia," he said, not angry, not warm, just found. He hugged me quickly, a perfunctory gesture. 2 pats on my back, a short inhale, a short exhale. Done. A transaction completed. My mom appeared behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and touched my arm like we were close enough for it to mean something. A fleeting contact meant to simulate a bond that had eroded years ago. Then she leaned past me to Vivian. "Oh my goodness," she said brightly, her voice pitching up an octave. "Look at you." Vivian lit up, because of course she did. She was a flower turning toward a sun that gave no heat. My mother can be wonderful in short bursts, dazzling and attentive for the duration of a camera flash. My mother can play grandma like it is a role she has rehearsed in front of a mirror, perfecting the tilt of the head, the COO of delight. My daughter has only ever seen the performance, never the backstage chaos. Vivian hugged her, burying her face in the perfume that smelled of lilies and judgment. My mom held on a second too long, looking over Vivian's shoulder at the rest of the room, like she was proving something to the audience, staking a claim on this child she barely knew. Then she let go and smiled at me, like we were doing so well, like we were a normal family having a normal day. I swallowed the urge to pull Vivian behind me, to shield her from the counterfeit warmth. Then my sister Monica arrived. Not loudly, not late, but with a terrifying precision. Perfect timing, like she had been waiting outside in her car, watching the clock, calculating the exact moment when the conversation would lull, so her entrance would be the punctuation mark. She did not walk into the room. She entered it, conquering the space with the click of her heels. "Lydia," she said with a smile that looked expensive. The kind of smile that costs money to maintain and hides everything behind veneers. "Monica," I said, and the air between us crackled with static. Vivian looked at her like you look at someone you have heard about forever, but have never really met. Hopeful, curious, trying to be liked before she even knows the rules of the game. Monica bent down, her jewelry catching the harsh overhead light, and kissed Vivian's cheek with a loud theatrical smack. "And this must be Vivian," she said, enunciating the name like she was announcing a celebrity, or perhaps a curiosity. Vivian nodded, smiling, desperate to be seen. Monica's eyes flicked over her, quick, assessing, calculating the cost of her clothes, the cut of her hair, the value of her presence. Then Monica straightened and looked at me with the expression I remembered from childhood. A look that said, "I am being nice. You owe me for it." Vivian didn't see any of that. Vivian only saw attention, drinking it in like a traveler in a desert. For a moment, watching my daughter's innocent joy, I thought, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could keep it light. Skate over the surface of the ice without breaking through to the dark water below. Maybe I could let Vivian have her normal family weekend and not pay for it later in therapy bills and tears. But then the room shifted. Not a big shift, just a ripple, a disturbance in the ether. People turned their heads toward the doorway. Not toward me, not toward Monica, toward the back. My grandmother, June, had arrived. She came in slowly, supported by a woman I did not recognize. A helper, a friend. Someone steady at her elbow, who moved in sync with her frailty. My grandmother looked smaller than I remembered, her bones seeming more prominent beneath her skin. But her eyes were the same, sharp, quiet. The kind of eyes that never miss where the money went. Eyes that could read a balance sheet or a lie with equal facility. Vivian's face changed instantly. Not the polite smile of earlier, but a deep, resonant change. Relief washed over her features. Grandma June, she breathed, the name escaping her like a prayer answered. And before I could say anything, before I could caution her to be slow, she was already moving through the room, navigating the maze of chairs and relatives like a homing pigeon. She did not hesitate. That bond is not complicated. It is the truest thing in this room. Everyone else floated in and out of Vivian's life like a seasonal decoration, and appearing for holidays and vanishing when the work began. My grandmother stayed. My grandmother called on Tuesdays just to hear about homework. My grandmother asked questions and waited for answers, actually listening to the rambling stories of a child. My grandmother showed up when she said she would, a constant in a variable world. Vivian adored her for it. My grandmother hugged Vivian carefully, her hands gentle on Vivian's shoulders. Fragile, knobby fingers gripping the youth and vitality of my daughter. "There you are," she said, her voice raspy but warm, like she had been holding a place for her in the universe and was relieved it was finally filled. Then she looked at me. Her gaze softened in that way that always made me feel like she understood the parts I did not say out loud, the parts I hid even from myself. "Lydia," she said. "I'm glad you're here." That sentence had weight. It was an anchor dropped in a storm. My grandmother does not waste words. She treats them like currency, spending them only when necessary. I nodded, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Me too. That was a lie, but it was a polite one, the grease that keeps the social gears turning. And we were still in the phase where politeness was pretending to be a shield, where we all acted as if the past hadn't happened. Dinner happened in pieces, a disjointed affair of passing bowls and awkward silences filled with the scrape of cutlery. Plates passed from hand to hand, potatoes, beans, a roast that was slightly too dry. Stories were told, laughing a little too loudly, leaving out the ugly parts like they were stains you could scrub out of the family history with enough bleach and denial. Vivian stayed close to my grandmother, a satellite orbiting its planet. Monica stayed close to my mom, the two of them whispering and glancing around the table like conspirators. My dad hovered between everyone, doing what he always does, smoothing, nodding, filling glasses, never choosing a side, never standing firm, existing in the gray area of non-commitment. Then, when plates were empty and smeared with gravy, and people leaned back in chairs like they had decided the hard part of the day was over, my grandmother stood. She did not stand fast, nor dramatically. She stood deliberately, pushing against the table with a strength that belied her age. The room quieted. Instinct. Families still do that, even broken ones. We recognize authority when it rises. My grandmother rested both hands on the back of her chair, her knuckles pale. "Yeah, I won't keep you long," she said. I almost laughed because my grandmother never kept anyone long. She does not ramble. She does point A to point B, straight as an arrow, and then she is done. Her eyes, magnified slightly by her glasses, landed on Vivian. "For my amazing great-granddaughter," she said, her voice warming the chill air. "I have a gift." Vivian froze. It was the good kind of frozen. The kind where your brain scrambles because something wonderful is happening to you, and you cannot decide how to hold your face, whether to smile or cry or gasp. My grandmother continued, ignoring the sudden tension radiating from Monica's side of the table. "I've been working with my lawyer," she said, and the word lawyer dropped onto the tablecloth like a stone. I'm setting up a trust." The word trust changed the air in the room instantly. It sucked the oxygen out. Not for Vivian. Vivian did not know what it meant, not really. She thought of trust as a feeling, not a financial instrument. But the adults did. My mom's posture shifted, her spine straightening as if an electric current had passed through it. Monica's smile faltered, the corners twitching downward as the calculation began behind her eyes. My grandmother kept going, oblivious or perhaps entirely aware of the effect she was having. "It will be hers," she said. "Protected. No one can touch it." When she turns 18, she'll have full control. Vivian's eyes were wide, reflecting the candlelight. "Grandma June," she started, overwhelmed. My grandmother lifted a hand gently to silence her. "Let me finish. There may be small distributions before then," she added, glancing briefly at me, "for things that support her future, education, travel. But the main thing is this: it's hers." A soft wave of applause moved through the room. Polite, socially mandated applause. A few relatives smiled, the cousins who didn't care about the money because they knew they weren't in line for it anyway. Someone said, "That's wonderful." And it was, in theory, a lovely moment. A patriarch passing a torch. Then I looked at Monica. She was not smiling. She was not clapping. She was staring at my grandmother like my grandmother had just handed the family home to a stranger on the street. Monica's face went pale in that controlled way people do when they are trying to keep their panic inside their skin, when the scream is stuck in their throat. My mom's mouth tightened into a thin line, a fissure in her composure. My dad's eyes flicked between them, confused, terrified of the conflict he smelled on the wind. Vivian was still glowing, still stunned, still trying to find words to express a gratitude she barely understood. My grandmother sat down carefully, like she had placed something valuable on the table, and now she was waiting to see who would try to grab it. There was a beat, a small silence, the kind where you can almost hear people thinking, the neurons firing in frantic patterns. Then Monica stood. Not casual, not hesitant, decisive, like she had made up her mind in one sharp inhale. She pointed at Vivian, actually extended her finger and pointed at my child. And she said loud enough for the room to hear, loud enough to cut through the walls, "She is mentally behind. Don't give her money." The silence that followed was not polite. It was heavy, thick, viscous. It was the kind of silence that happens when everyone in a room is having the same thought at the same time. Did she really just say that? Did the veneer just crack that badly? Vivian blinked once, twice, confused first, then hurt, like her brain could not compute that an adult, an aunt, had just pointed at her and announced something terrible about her, like it was a fact, like it was the weather report. My grandmother stared at Monica in surprise, her brows knitting together. Then my grandmother's gaze shifted to me, then back to Monica, and she said very quietly, with a calmness that was more terrifying than shouting, "You really don't know who she is?" Monica's mouth opened slightly. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking allies. Then she swallowed, the sound audible in the quiet. "Wait, really?" she said. And for the first time, she sounded less like a performer and more like someone who had just stepped on stage and realized she did not know her lines, that the script had been changed without her knowledge. My grandmother did not argue. She did not defend. She did not raise her voice to match Monica's. She merely corrected the record. "Vivian," she said, turning toward my daughter. "Sweetheart, stand up for a second." Vivian hesitated. Her hands were shaking, trembling in her lap. Then she stood anyway, because Vivian is brave in the way quiet kids are brave. The kind of brave that happens when you do the thing even though your throat hurts and your knees feel like water. My grandmother looked around the room, making eye contact with every single person. "Some of you already know this," she said, "because you have been in her life." That line landed, not loud, but clean. A surgeon's cut separating the family into those who cared and those who pretended. My grandmother continued. "Vivian has been accepted into the Larkin Academic Fellowship Program, a highly selective, gifted program." A ripple went through the room, a soft intake of breath, a couple of quiet exclamations of surprise. Vivian's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, and her eyes flicked to me like she was not sure if she was allowed to be proud in the middle of being attacked, if joy was permitted in the war zone. My grandmother kept her tone calm, reciting the facts like she was reading a court verdict. "Straight A's," she said. "Recommendations, interviews." Then she added, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. The final nail in the coffin of Monica's argument. I paid the deposit. The deposit. That was the part that made the room understand. Not just that Vivian was accepted, but that it was real, recent, verified, and that the only way Monica did not know was if Monica had not been there. Monica's arm dropped slowly to her side, like her body had finally remembered gravity. My grandmother tilted her head slightly, studying her granddaughter. "So, when you say you know who she is," she said, "I have to wonder what child you are talking about." Vivian's breath hitched. A small sob caught in her chest. My mom stared at the table like the wood grain might tell her what to say next to fix this, to rewrite the scene. My dad's face did that uncomfortable shifting thing it does when he wants everyone to stop and also wants no one to blame him. And Monica just stood there. For once, she did not know where to put her face. If you asked me 10 years ago whether Monica would ever point at a child in front of witnesses and try to shrink her with one sentence, I would have said no. Not because Monica is kind, but because Monica is strategic. Monica does cruelty with witnesses only when she thinks she will win, when the audience is stacked in her favor. So when I tell you she did it anyway, you need to understand what kind of desperation makes someone gamble like that. To explain that, I have to go back. Not to Vivian, but to me. Growing up, Monica was the center of everything. Not in a metaphorical way, but in a practical daily way. Whatever she wanted, the house shifted to make it happen. My parents didn't make speeches about favoritism. They didn't have to. And they practiced it quietly, in tone, in attention, in the way my mom's face lit up when Monica walked into a room, a sunrise reserved only for her. It was in the way my dad learned how to praise Monica without thinking, a reflex like breathing. Monica was gifted. I was difficult. Monica was so talented. I was trying. Monica sang, and my mom would glow, radiating pride. I sang, and my mom would tilt her head like she was listening for a reason to be impressed, searching for the flaw. Then came the choir audition. It was a selective children's choir, the kind where you audition, and they do not just let everyone in. It mattered. At least, it mattered to Monica. My parents talked about it like it was already decided. Monica would get in. Of course she would. The world belonged to her. I was discouraged so gently, it almost sounded like concern. "Don't get your hopes up, Lydia," my mom said, smoothing my hair. "It's very competitive." Monica practiced loudly in the living room, filling the house with her scales. My dad praised her. My mom said, "That's my girl." Like Monica's voice was proof our family story was correct. I practiced quietly in my room, door half closed, singing into my pillow so no one would hear the ambition in my voice. Then we auditioned. And I got in. Monica didn't. The shock on Monica's face was the first time I understood she believed the family story as much as my parents did. She believed in her own divinity. For a second, I thought maybe that would crack something open. Maybe my parents would adjust. Maybe they would say, "Well, look at that. Lydia can sing." Instead, they minimized it. They comforted Monica as if she had been wronged, as if the judges had made a clerical error. They treated my acceptance like an inconvenience, like I had taken something that belonged to her by right. It was not said outright, but it lived in the air. It lived in the way my mom hugged Monica longer than she congratulated me. It lived in the way my dad said, "Sometimes judges have preferences," like my success was a fluke, a mistake of taste. Monica never forgave me for that choir, and my parents spent years trying to make it up to her. That is how resentments become family heirlooms. Everyone keeps passing them down like they are precious, polishing them until they shine. Fast forward. I left home as soon as I could. I did not slam the door dramatically. I just stopped trying, stopped chasing approval I was never going to get. I drifted away like a boat cutting its moorings. I also made the classic mistake of someone who has been emotionally starved. I mistook attention for love. I got into a relationship too quickly, believed promises too easily, and when it fell apart, I was left holding a baby and learning how to be steady on my own. Vivian was the best thing that ever happened to me. She was my anchor. She was also, at first, hard. Not because she was bad, but because she was wired differently. When Vivian was little, she struggled with focus and emotional regulation. Bright one moment, overwhelmed the next. Forgetting a simple instruction, then reciting an entire story she heard once with perfect recall. When Vivian was 7, we did not have a diagnosis yet. We just had storms, and me trying to build a safe home in the middle of them, trying to keep the roof on while the winds howled. Then came the visit. Vivian was 7. I remember because she had just lost her first front tooth, and she could not stop touching the gap with her tongue like she was proud of the emptiness. We were with my parents and Monica. Vivian was being Vivian. Talkative, restless, excited, sometimes too loud, vibrating with energy. My mom watched her like she was studying a problem, a stain on the carpet. Monica made a comment about Vivian being a lot. Then they did the thing I recognized in my bones, right in front of my child. They speculated she was behind. They suggested special schooling. They said it with that soft, superior tone people use when they think they are being helpful, when they wrap their cruelty in cotton wool. Vivian heard every word. I watched her face change. In the way a child's face changes, when something inside them cracks just a little, when the innocence begins to leak out. That was the last straw. Not because I was dramatic, but because I was tired. I had lived that pattern my whole life. I was not going to watch it take root in my daughter. So I pulled back hard. No big announcement, no screaming phone call, just distance, boundaries, minimal contact. And then Vivian was diagnosed with ADHD. Once we had the right support and structure, everything shifted. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Vivian learned how her brain worked. We built routines, found tools. The storms did not vanish, but they became navigable. We learned to sail the ship. Vivian thrived. Strong student, motivated, capable. Bright in a way that was unmistakable once you were not committed to misunderstanding her. Through all of it, my grandmother stayed involved. She called Vivian. She listened. She showed up. She treated Vivian like a whole person, not a project. My parents and Monica did not. Then Vivian applied to the Larkin Academic Fellowship Program. Straight A's, recommendations, interviews, the whole process that makes teenagers sweat and parents pretend they are fine while secretly spiraling. Vivian got accepted. My grandmother knew. Other relatives knew. My parents and Monica didn't. They weren't there. Then, months before the reunion, they reappeared like someone had flipped a switch. Texts, calls, warmth. It wasn't subtle. I figured it out later. That was when they learned my grandmother had money, serious money. And they showed up like they had just remembered family mattered. That is the thing about money. And it does not just reveal character, it reveals timing. By the time we reached the reunion, I knew something was coming. I just didn't know how ugly Monica would be willing to make it in public. Now I did. After my grandmother said gifted program, the room stayed awkwardly quiet. Not the stunned silence from Monica's accusation, but a different silence. The kind where people are recalculating what they just witnessed and trying to decide where to look. Vivian wiped her eyes fast, swiping at her face like tears were something she could erase with enough effort. She tried to look brave. She was shaking. Monica recovered first. Of course she did. She is a creature of adaptation. Monica always tries to reclaim control. "I'm only trying to protect you," she said to my grandmother, her voice suddenly soft and reasonable, dripping with faux concern. "You don't know what she's like at home. Lydia has coached her. You don't see it." My parents backed her up. Not with facts, but with tone, humming in harmony with her melody. We didn't want to upset anyone, my mom said, playing the victim card with practiced ease. We just thought you should know. My dad nodded behind her, uncomfortable and committed to not committing. A bobblehead of acquiescence. My grandmother did not argue about ADHD. She didn't get pulled into a medical conversation she didn't need to have. She asked one question, a scalpel of a question. When was the last time you actually saw Vivian? She said. Monica blinked rapidly. My grandmother tilted her head. Name the last time. Monica's mouth opened, closed, a fish out of water. And her eyes flicked toward my mom like she was looking for a lifeline, a script prompt. My mom stepped in. We've been around, she said vaguely. We know. My grandmother's voice stayed calm, relentless. Then tell me something small, she said. Something recent. Something you would only know if you were in her life. Does she play a sport? What's her favorite subject? What book is she reading? Monica's face tightened, the mask slipping. And that is when I stepped in. Not loudly, not dramatically. I moved between Monica and my daughter, putting my body in the line of fire. I put a steady hand on Vivian's shoulder and felt the tremors running through her. I looked my sister in the eye and said, "Don't speak about my child like that again." My voice didn't shake. I didn't raise it. I didn't need to. The truth has its own volume. Vivian leaned into my hand just slightly, anchoring herself against me. My grandmother looked at me once. Something passed between us. Recognition, relief, maybe both. Then she turned back to Monica and my parents. This is about the trust, my grandmother said plainly, stripping away the pretense. And I won't have it. Monica tried to protest. That's not fair. My grandmother cut her off without raising her voice. We're done here. The room stayed quiet, not because people had no opinions, but because no one wanted to be the next person my grandmother looked at with that level of disappointment. You need to leave, my grandmother said. Monica stared, stunned. My mom's face hardened, the sweet grandmother mask dissolving into something brittle. Mom, she warned. My grandmother did not flinch. Not another word about her. Monica gathered herself with stiff, furious movements, jerking her purse onto her shoulder. My parents moved with her, still clinging to the illusion that this was concern and not greed. Their dignity in tatters. They left. No apology, no attempt to comfort Vivian, no glance that suggested a relationship beyond entitlement. The door closed with a finality that echoed in the silence. When the door shut, Vivian's control broke. She cried in that raw, stunned way that is not about one moment. It is about suddenly understanding adults can be cruel and unfair, and you cannot logic your way out of it. I didn't do anything, she choked out, her face buried in her hands. I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her shaking frame. I know. Why would she say that? Vivian sobbed. I swallowed hard. And because there are answers you don't want to give your child at 13. You don't want to tell them that envy is a rot that eats people from the inside out. Instead, I gave her the truth she could carry. Because she doesn't know you, I said softly, smoothing her hair. And she wants to pretend she does. Vivian wiped her face hard, angry through the tears. But Grandma June knows me. Yes, I said. And that's why she couldn't win. The reunion continued, technically. People cleared plates. Someone put on coffee. The smell of brewing beans trying to normalize the atmosphere. A couple of relatives tried to act like they didn't just watch a child get publicly targeted, making small talk about the weather. But the energy had changed. It was quieter, realer. The illusion of the happy family was gone, and replaced by something starker, but perhaps more honest. Later in the car, on the drive back, the ocean was dark, a black void beside the highway. Vivian stared out the window and said, "So, they don't actually know me at all, do they?" I kept my eyes on the road, the headlights carving a tunnel through the night. "No," I said. "They don't." Vivian was quiet for a long time. the rhythm of the road filling the silence. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "That's what hurts." I reached over and took her hand, squeezing it tight, and I thought we had made it through the worst part. I thought the storm had passed. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds, a deceptively cheerful start to the day. Then I checked my email. There was a message from the gifted program that made my whole body go cold before my brain finished reading it. It was polite, professional, distant. The bureaucratic language of disaster. It said Vivian's place was on hold, pending review, due to a video that had surfaced and raised concerns about integrity. They were pausing next steps while they investigated. It didn't say withdrawn, it didn't say expelled, paused. But the pause felt like a cliff edge. My first thought was not random internet drama. My first thought was Monica. Because of course it was. The reunion, the humiliation, the trust out of reach. It was a sequence of dominoes falling. Then this. I sat up in bed, heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, and opened my phone with fingers that suddenly felt clumsy and thick. I found it faster than I wanted to. On a link in a distant cousin's group chat, a screenshot from someone I barely spoke to. Have you seen this? That awful casual tone people use when they share something destructive, like it is gossip, like it is entertainment. I clicked. Vertical video, shaky warm lamplight. Vivian's face framed too close, uncomfortably close, like someone on the other end of a couch decided privacy was optional. A girl off camera laughed. "Say it again." Vivian laughed too. Same mouth, same dimples, wrong sound. The laugh was tinny, hollow. In the video, Vivian rolled her eyes like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "The funniest thing," she said, dragging the words out in a drawl I didn't recognize. "Everyone is so stupid." I wanted to turn it off. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I didn't. I forced myself to watch. In the video, Vivian tilted her head. "That gifted program. It's not even special. I don't even want it." The girl off camera snorted. "I thought it was like, hard to get in." Video Vivian smirked, a cruel twisting of her lips. "I hate studying. I really hate studying." She said it the way kids say something nasty and wait to see if it gets a reaction. Then she leaned in, conspiratorial, her eyes glinting. My mom got me the answers. The words landed clean. Too clean. The girl gasped. "All of them?" "Yeah," Video Vivian said, nodding like she was proud and bored at the same time. "In advance." I don't even know how she got them. She just had them. She lifted her hands in a shrug, big and theatrical, like the whole world was easy, a fruit ripe for the plucking. "So, you just memorized them?" the girl asked. "Obviously," Video Vivian said, rolling her eyes again. "For days. It was still hard, okay? People act like cheating is effortless." She laughed at her own joke. The laugh was sharp again, metallic. Then she shifted gears like she'd been waiting for the punchline, the real purpose of this performance. "My mom said it's for inheritance." Video Vivian said it like inheritance was a dirty word or a game piece. "Like tons of money." The girl went, "No way." "Oh yeah." Video Vivian smiled, a predator's smile. "My great-grandma loves all the hard work stuff, so my mom was like, get into the program and she'll be impressed." She flicked her hair back, a little performance flourish, and it worked. Video Vivian added, "She believed it. She totally believed it." There. That was the point of the video. Not the program, not the studying. The convincing an old woman she was being generous to a sweet, grateful kid while mocking her behind her back. It was a dagger aimed straight at the trust fund. Video Vivian leaned back and said lightly, like it wasn't a confession at all, "Now she's setting up a trust. When I'm 18, I get the money, and then I'm done." "Done with what?" the girl asked. "Done with all of it?" Video Vivian waved a hand. "School, trying, whatever." She laughed again. The camera jerked, caught a blur of Vivian's shoulder, and the edge of a pillow that looked vaguely familiar, but not quite right. Then the video cut off mid-laugh, like someone hit stop at the exact moment it would hurt most. I stared at the black screen, my reflection ghostly in the glass. Not because I needed to process what was said, but because I needed to process what it was designed to do. It wasn't Vivian. I knew that in my marrow. It was a fake wearing her face. It wasn't trying to embarrass her. It was trying to rewrite the reunion. It was trying to hand Monica a second chance to say, "See, I told you," and make everyone believe her this time. My immediate instinct was to keep Vivian from seeing it, which was impossible. The internet does not care about my instincts. It is a monster that eats innocence. But I could control one thing: how fast I moved. Screenshots, timestamps, links, the message threads where it was spreading. My hands were steady now, fueled by a cold, hard rage. My chest was not, my heart was galloping. Then I heard movement in the hallway, the soft pad of bare feet. Vivian came out, already tense, like she had woken up into something wrong. Kids know. They do not always know what, but they know when the air changes, when the pressure drops before the hurricane. She looked at my face and froze. "What happened?" she asked. Her voice was already shaking, vibrating with fear. I tried to keep my expression neutral. I really did. But my body gave me away. The tension in my shoulders, the grip on the phone. Vivian's eyes flicked to my device. Then her own phone buzzed in her pocket. A notification. And I watched the exact moment her world shifted. She didn't even have to watch the whole thing. She saw enough. Her face, her voice, words she would never say. She made a sound, half sob, half gasp, a wounded animal noise. "I didn't say that," she said immediately, her eyes wide with terror. "I didn't say any of that." "I know," I said, my voice firm, cutting through her panic. I know you didn't." Vivian's breath hitched. "They're going to believe it. They're going to investigate it," I said. "That's not the same thing." She shook her head, backing away as if the phone could bite her. "The program," she whispered. "Did they see it?" I didn't want to say it. I wanted to protect her from one more wound. But Vivian was 13, not 5. She needed the truth to fight the battle. "So," I said it softly, "they put your place on hold." Vivian's face crumpled, collapsing in on itself. "So I'm losing it." "No," I said immediately, stepping forward. "Not today." Vivian stared at me like she needed me to be certain enough for both of us. Like I was the only thing standing between her and the abyss. I took her phone and closed it, placing it face down on the table. Not as punishment, but as protection. You're not watching that again," I said. "You're not reading comments. You're not letting someone else's lies live in your head." Vivian wiped her face hard, angry now, the shock turning to fury. "Who would do this?" I did not answer immediately, because I could not say Monica's name without turning it into a fire that would burn the house down. Instead, I said what mattered. "This was done to you," I told her. "It isn't you." Vivian nodded, but her eyes were terrified, haunted. "What if Grandma June believes it?" she whispered. That question landed like a stone in deep water. We had not heard from my grandmother yet, and my grandmother is older. Sharp, yes, but from a generation that grew up believing video was proof, that seeing was believing. Vivian's voice was small, fragile. I don't want her to think that's why I'm with her. I pulled her close, smelling the sleep still on her skin. "She knows you," I said, willing it to be true. "She knows your heart." Vivian shook with silent crying against my chest. I let her cry for a minute, holding the space for her grief. Then I stood up because Mother Bear energy does not look like screaming. It looks like action. It looks like war. I called a lawyer. Short notice meeting. I brought everything. The program email, the link, the screenshots, the message threads. I didn't walk in asking if there was anything we could do. I walked in saying, someone is using a fake video of my child to destroy her reputation and her education. The lawyer watched the clip. She didn't flinch. Her face was a mask of professional determination. "We can take action," she said. But we filed a police report. The officer was careful with his words, the way they always are at the beginning, managing expectations. He couldn't promise outcomes, but he gave me the one thing I needed to hear. "Uploads leave trails," he said. "Platforms keep logs. Leads can be followed." That was enough to move to the next step, proving what the video actually was. I didn't need to become a forensic expert. I needed credible confirmation. Through the lawyer, we got a digital forensics expert to look at it. We sat in a small, cool room filled with monitors. He paused the video on the line where Vivian says, "My mom got me the answers." "Right there," he said, pointing with a pen. He replayed it slowly. The sound hit first. The mouth followed a fraction of a second late. The shape of the word didn't match the teeth. "Now look here," he said. See, tapping the screen at the edge of her jaw. The outline shimmered for a frame, a digital ghost, then settled. "That's a blend artifact." He skipped ahead a second, paused again. "The background jumps," he added. "See the couch? It shifts, then snaps back. That doesn't happen in a real recording. The lighting on her face doesn't match the ambient light source." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "This isn't authentic. It's fabricated, a deepfake." "Write that," I said. He did. 3 lines on letterhead, signed and stamped, clear enough for anyone to read. I took a photo of it. In the car, Vivian sat with her phone face down in her lap, afraid to touch it. "I know I didn't say it," she said, "but can you prove it's fake in a way they'll believe?" I turned the phone so she could see the letter. Yes. At home, I opened the family chat. But the link was still there, a festering wound. "This video is fake," I typed. An expert confirmed it. Then I pasted the 3 points from the letter and attached the photo of the document. "Please stop sharing it. It's been reported and is being investigated." Replies came in fast. "I deleted it." "I'm sorry. Who would do this to a kid?" The tide turned. Vivian stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. "Do they know who did it?" "Not yet," I said. Later that night, the program emailed again. Still under review, but different. They acknowledged the video could be manipulated and said they would not treat it as a verified statement. It was a reprieve. Vivian read it once, then again, breathing easier. Near midnight, the phone rang. It was my grandmother. Vivian took the phone, her hand trembling. "I saw it," my grandmother said, her voice crackling over the line. "And?" Vivian asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It isn't you," she said. "I know my girl, and I know a fake when I see one. That wasn't your spirit." Vivian cried harder at that than she did at the video itself. Relief is a powerful release. After she hung up, Vivian looked at me, her eyes red but clear. "So, we're okay." "We're okay," I said. "And we're not done." Because the video was fake. We proved that. The only thing left unanswered was the one question no one was ready to say out loud yet. Who did it? Time does something strange after a crisis. It stretches, it compresses. You look back and realize you lived weeks in a haze of adrenaline and phone calls and trying to keep your child's world from cracking. Vivian stayed in the gifted program. That is the first thing you need to know. The video did not take her future. It tried. It failed. Vivian also stayed close to my grandmother. The bond held. Weeks turned into months. The investigation turned into paperwork. Paperwork turned into court dates that I did not describe to Vivian in detail because she was 13, and she deserved to keep being 13. But I was there when it mattered. The upload trail led back to Monica. It was almost disappointing how simple it was. Platforms keep logs. Investigators follow them. Anonymous lasts right up until someone with a warrant asks for records. It was an IP address. It was a timestamp. It was Monica. Monica took a plea deal to avoid a trial that would have exposed her completely. 200 hours of community service, a year of probation, and a strict no-contact order with Vivian. She also had to remove and stop distributing the video and any copies of it. The judge called it what it was: harassment aimed at a minor. Her community service landed with community corrections, weekend work crew, bright vest, trash bags, park cleanup. The kind of work you can't spin into a story about being misunderstood. She had to pick up trash in the very parks she used to stroll through. My parents weren't charged, but the family stopped treating them like harmless background characters. The illusion shattered. Invitations dried up. Group chats went quiet. People got busy. Funny how that happens when the toxicity becomes undeniable. My grandmother finalized the trust without fanfare. $150,000 for Vivian, locked until 18. Unlimited early distributions for education and programs that support her future, and a trustee who doesn't share our last name, someone neutral and unshakable. Monica was cut out. My parents were cut out. It was all handled the way my grandmother handles everything. Signatures, dates, done. Then we went back to school days. Vivian dove into the program, complained about the workload, lit up when she talked about it. The reunion blurred into memory, but Grandma June's sentence didn't. You really don't know who she is. And now, neither did they. They never would. But we did. And that was enough.